TrekProfiles Podcast, Episode 14, recorded October 20th, 2018. This is the Trek Profiles Podcast, and we are still keeping up with our little change of format here in episode 14. If you didn't hear episode 13, I was invited by Mark Schwartz, the owner of A&M Collectibles, which is a comic and collectible shop here in Vegas, to set up at a sci-fi meetup event that he was hosting and do some podcast recording. So I recorded a whole bunch of audio, and I had too much to even put into one episode, so episode 13 was part 1, and this is part 2. I want to let you know that I wasn't in the best environment for podcasting since I was in the collectible toy shop in a spare room, so there is some background noise and things like that. But it's not too bad. You can overlook it, I hope. I'd love to know what you think about these mini Trek Profile interviews, so if you want to give me some feedback, you can always reach out to me at feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter at TrekProfiles. So without further ado, let's jump right into these interviews. First, we'll have Robert, who's the captain of the local Las Vegas Star Trek Club, and then Rick, and then after that is Mark, who actually owns the shop where I was recording that day, and then we have Charles, and after that'll be Linda, and then finally Paul, who is the founder of the Star Trek Club. I'm going to try to put in chapter markers in this particular episode, so if you're listening on a podcast player and your app supports it, you should be able to jump around between the interviews. So we'll see how that goes. Let me know what you think and if you like that feature. All right, let's get into it. M5, roll it. And boom, we're live, and I'm here with Robert. Hi, Robert.
Hello.
Are you a Star Trek fan?
Oh, yes.
How long have you been a Star Trek fan?
About 40 years. I actually moved here from Seattle to work at Star Trek The Experience. I was one of the original opening crew in 1998.
And what did you do with The Experience?
Retail. I worked in the Admiral collection.
This little store.
The store that sold the high-end props and costumes and all that good stuff, yes. And
you moved here specifically to work there?
Yes. And I was there for 7.5 years. They cut the staff at one point because they got new owners, and I moved on from there. But I actually worked there 3 times, and actually that's where our admiral of the Star Trek Club is my partner, and we met in the Admiral collection. I was his trainer.
Oh, that's fantastic!
So, and we now have the sign for the store in our living room. Because 20 years later, the Star Trek Club was asked to help with the asset sale for the Experience in 2010, and we had to dig through. They Paramount hired a demolition crew to demolish the Experience with bulldozers, and they moved all of it to Sahara and Mojave. And we had the pleasure of digging through all the stuff, picking out all the good stuff so they could have an auction at the Creation Convention.
All right. Just be careful about hitting the table. Okay? You can put your hands on the table, but the mic will pick it up. So just be careful. You can put your hands on it. It's okay. Just don't hit it too much.
Okay.
So you were digging through all the stuff that was left over from the Experience.
Yep. We went through, they had just dumped it all in a pile in a warehouse at Sahara, at Mojave and Charleston for a year and a half. And they finally ended up having a sale for one of them was at the convention, and the other one they had an asset sale actually on site where they sold the stuff that was left that was good. Then they got rid of. There was a garbage pile 40 feet high out back behind this place, and you could tell what all of it was if you'd been to the Experience before. So it was really sad, But yeah, and then we've both collected stuff for almost 30 years. I have a whole apartment full of all the action figures and plates and cups and.
What's the favorite thing that you own in your collection?
Probably, the Admiral sign for one, because there's only 2 of them, and the second one sold for $3,000 at the auction. and it's where we met, so that was cool. But I also have some of the Lightspeed artwork. I worked for Lightspeed Fine Art for 3 years also. He was the main supplier for the Star Trek artwork. He has the Star Trek copyright license. And I have First Family is signed by the entire original cast. I have a Next Gen litho signed by the entire Next Gen crew. I also have one that's 30th anniversary that has all 4 casts on it. It'll need 2 signatures to be complete.
Nice.
So that one I'm still working on. I need Patrick Stewart and Nicole DeBoer, I think was the other one. Or no, Roxanne Dawson to be complete. So that's really cool.
Oh, that's really nice.
Only took 20 years to complete. So.
And what would you say is the most valuable thing in your collection, if it's not one of those things you already talked about?
Probably the 30th anniversary litho that's got everybody on it. I mean, Jimmy Doohan is on it, who passed away in 2005. Right. It's got Majel Barrett Roddenberry, and she actually signed it Roddenberry on it, which was cool. And then I have an Enterprise toy that was actually the original Playmates toy. Mm-hmm. And it's signed by the entire living cast of the original series, so that's cool too.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, have you seen all 700 and something hours of Star Trek?
There's some of the episodes of Enterprise, because I wasn't real fond of the shows that I missed. But other than that, yeah, we have CBS All Access, so I've watched Discovery, the new one. And, of course, I've seen all the original and Next Gen, DS9, and Voyager episodes hundreds of times.
And which one's your favorite so far?
I still like the original series. I grew up on it, so I've collected stuff for that forever.
All right. And which one would you put just below that?
Next Gen, Patrick Stewart. And now I guess he's coming back to television as Captain Picard again.
Yes.
Which I was there at the convention for the announcement, so that was really cool.
Do you go to the convention every year?
The Star Trek Club, which I'm the captain of, we have a booth in the dealer's room for the last 13 years. And yes, so it's kind of mandatory.
Yes, it's mandatory. But, I bet you have a little bit of a different experience when you got to staff the booth than when you're just going to go, right?
Yes. And this year we had the special pleasure of having the cast of Land of the Lost next to us, where they sang their theme song for 5 days straight.
Did you get attacked by a slee stack? Yeah. Because it'd be all worth it.
He was actually sitting next to us.
If you're going to get eaten by a slee stack, I mean, that would just be the way to go. Right?
It was interesting.
I mean, that would just be the number one thing.
And the year before that, I had we did a special thing for Robert Picardo. One of our club members is his booking agent, and he calls me at work. I work at NV Energy. He calls me at work and says, "I need your help." You need my help for what? So he said, I have a room on the 3rd floor of my 8,700 square foot mansion that it has everything I've ever owned from Star Trek and all the TV shows. He was on Wonder Years for 4 years. He was Coach Cutlet. He was on every different show. He was on Stargate Atlantis for 2 seasons. He had every script.
I actually saw him on that before I saw him on Star Trek. I hadn't watched Voyager because I was in the Navy at the time, so I wasn't in a place where I could watch TV. So I'm doing a Voyager rewatch now.
Oh, cool.
But it's the series I've actually seen the least of. So I knew Robert Picardo from Stargate Atlantis.
He was the doctor on China Beach for 4 years. So we went down to his house, actually stayed at his house for 4 days, and sorted this room full of stuff. He had all of the scripts from every episode of Voyager. He had his costumes from Voyager. He had the wall for sick bay, all kinds of stuff. So that was really cool.
Was he trying to liquidate it? Or
what we ended up doing was bringing it all back here to Las Vegas. And we had a booth next to our booth at the convention for the last 3 years. And I was selling his collectibles. Well, he's moving to New York to go back to Broadway, and he wanted the stuff back. So we actually took it back to him in June. 2 of the guys that are here today for this event drove it back to his house, or his storage unit, because he had sold the house by then, but in Pasadena. So I don't have it anymore, but I had some really cool stuff. I had his mask from when he was the werewolf in The Howling.
Oh,
I had his mask from that. I had all kinds of stuff. It was really cool.
That's really nice.
Then we had Ethan Phillips stuff too, because he's his best friend. So I had Ethan's the eyepiece that he wore on his makeup appliance for Neelix. So I had all kinds of neat stuff.
So a very extensive collection.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What kind of talk to me about what kind of pleasure it gives you to look at the collection? I mean, what does it do for you?
I've just enjoyed, I have lots of the plates, and I try and complete the sets of those, and I guess it's the hunt for to finish the collection that's cool. We have the trading cards and all the good stuff. So, I mean, every time they come out with a new show, there's more stuff. So it's like, after 52 years, there's enough stuff. You should see our apartment. There was a Spanish TV series here in Las Vegas. He came over and did a story on us for 3 hours, and they edited it down, and then we're watching the closing credits, and he spelled Star Trek wrong.
Oh my gosh.
But it turned out really cool. But that was the only major mistake that they made. But so, yeah, I've collected stuff for almost 30 years. And some of the stuff he has down here was from our club members. And
so as you think back upon all of your time as a Star Trek fan,
yep.
Which episodes for you, or even movies if you want, would count as not the best, but are most meaningful to you personally for whatever reason?
Basically because they've dealt with the original series was Relics from Next Gen.
Yeah, when Scotty comes back.
Where they find Scotty stuck in a transporter loop.
Yep.
For 75 years. And the only reason they did that was because Jimmy Doohan did not want to look like DeForest Kelley from the opening pilot for the show. He said, I'm not appearing on TV as a 140-year-old. So they had to come up with the gimmick to get him. And then Trials and Tribulations from DS9. That was one of my favorites.
Well, what a technical achievement that episode
was. That was really cool.
The script was delightful, but just the fact that they were able to film the thing was just amazing.
And I mean, considering that the sets had been destroyed in 1969 and the Enterprise was in the Smithsonian, so they had to reconstruct everything from scratch. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and that was made at the time where they still didn't do a lot of CG.
Right.
It was still... then
there was the episode of Voyager, which with Sulu.
I hadn't seen that one yet, so I can't help you with that one.
That one you'll like, too. That one's called Flashback. And they end up on the bridge of the Excelsior when they had the energy wave attack in Star Trek VI. Mm-hmm. And it's Janeway and Sulu appear on the bridge. So it's really cool.
Oh, fantastic! Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying my Voyager.
I think it was season
rewatch
4. I think it was season 4. It was done for the 35th anniversary of the original series.
I'm right at the beginning of season 2, so I've only seen a few episodes into season 2. Because what happened is, as we record this, it's October. Excuse me. And of course, all the new TV shows came back on. So all this regular stuff that I watch so came on. So during the summer, I'm like all in Star Trek, right? Because there's nothing else on. So I'm watching Star Trek all the time. So it kind of slows down when other shows come on. I got to catch up.
Roseanne comes back. Well, we won't talk about that.
I don't watch that, but I got all this other insane stuff that I like to watch. So it's all back on. But I'll get there eventually. So that is my goal. I've been doing I started back with TOS and watched it all straight through and did animated series and did TNG, finished Deep Space Nine. Now I'm in a Voyager. Then I'll do Enterprise.
Then you'll do Enterprise and Discovery.
And I've seen Discovery.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm caught up on that as well. Cool. So any other episodes that jump out at you?
I like one of my favorites was Best of Both Worlds. Mm-hmm. Which is where Picard gets
first part, second part, or both of them together.
Together, that actually was the cliffhanger that saved the show. Mm-hmm. Because the reason they did that was they weren't sure Patrick was coming back for the next season because he wanted too much money. So they had a way of
killing him. Yeah, they could totally kill him if they wanted to.
Yep. So that was how they. But I like that one. That's our Admiral. You'll always hear.
Yeah, I can hear the voices out there. It's okay.
You'll be hearing from him.
My tens of listeners know that I have know that this is a live recording here, so it's all right.
No problem. Let me think. And then, of course, the original series episodes, The Trouble with Tribbles. That was one of my favorites.
So let me ask you a different question. So let's assume I'm a friend of yours. I call you up and I say, hey, Robert, I'm in the airport. I got about 10 minutes. I'm fixing to get on a plane.
Right.
I've never seen any Star Trek. I'm going to take an episode with me to watch. I only have time to download one episode. What should I watch?
Probably the one for the DS9 episode, Trials and Tribulations. You'll learn all the backstory and then get to see the DS9 people also. Trying to think of what other ones would be really good for that. Yeah, I would do that one.
All right, fantastic.
Cool.
Fantastic. What is Star Trek? What does it mean to you?
Now there's a lot. It represents something I grew up with. I think my mother has regretted this since the day she did it, but they put me in front of the TV when I was 3 years old, and I guess it was my entertainment. They've regretted that later after 50 years of stuff, but but it represents something from my childhood that, which we didn't know was going to continue for 52 years, but it has. So, I've met all of the original series people. I met Gene in 1986. So I guess it's familiar. Something that,
Because what I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to figure out why you like it.
Good question. I've tried to figure that out for 50 years, but it would have saved me a whole lot of money if I knew the reason why. But I guess just the entertainment value, and it's something I grew up with.
Fair enough, Robert. Fair enough. Yeah. So do you have any social media presence you want to share with people, Twitter or Facebook or anything like that?
USSLasVegas.org is our website. The club's 13th anniversary is in January. Mm-hmm. We meet at Blueberry Hill at Flamingo in Decatur on the third Wednesday of each month. The November meeting, we moved because it's the day before Thanksgiving, so it's going to be November 28th instead because we figured everybody would be busy for the holiday. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, check out that. It has, we've got photos from all the stuff we did with Shatner's bike ride, all the stuff we've done for the last 20 years for the 13 years for the club. So, USSLasVegas.org. We also have the Facebook page for the USS Las Vegas. So.
Perfect. Robert, thank you for being on Trek Profiles.
Sure. Thank you.
Incoming transmission.
I interview Star Trek fans about being Star Trek fans.
Okay.
And why they like it and what they like about it and what it means in their life. Like, why are they into it? Right?
All right.
So, yeah. And typically each episode is a single interview. So, they run like 2.5 hours, like for the longest ones, right? So I've been doing it for about 6 months. I got about 12 episodes out. I just launched the last one last night. So if you're in a podcast at all, go ahead and check it out if you like that sort of thing. But I'm here at A&M Collectibles today for Mark, and I'm just interviewing people who want to be interviewed and asking them about their fandom. So tell me who you are.
Well, my name's Rick Lattin. I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been here since I was about 4 years old. So certainly a Las Vegas local, and a big Star Trek fan as well.
How long have you been a Star Trek fan?
Well, the initial way, I guess, that it started with me, I started probably right around 12 years old. However, I do recall, and I'm in my 50s now, I do recall vaguely watching one of the original broadcasts of the third season episode. Sitting in front of the console TV with my parents, and I remember specifically from And the Children Shall Lead when Sulu sees the knives coming at him. And that apparently must have affected me when I saw that, because I recall seeing that original broadcast. Anyway, when I was 12 years old, I went to, with my dad, a friend of his who had a son that was my age down in Southern California. And as we were there in his room, we started somehow or another talking about Star Trek, which to me at the time was just ha ha ha, kind of a joke thing. But he handed me a real dog-eared copy of The Making of Star Trek.
Oh, yeah, Stephen E. Whitfield.
Stephen Whitfield,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It's a fantastic book.
And that particular summer, my parents were getting divorced. So during that summer, as I was staying with my mom, I brought that book with me. And having had a lot of time available, obviously, I started reading the book. And I found it just absolutely something that just kicked in. I mean, I like this idea. I read on how they put the show together, how it was produced, things that I was interested in from watching a lot of TV, of course. I was of that generation that we grew up with Batman and, the TV shows
Adam
like
West and
Star
Burt
Trek,
Ward.
absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
all of that stuff. So, those things were of interest to me at the time. Anyway, Star Trek really tripped my trigger at the time, and became a huge fan of it, and started watching. Of course, this is when syndication was going on, and we would see a lot of the broadcast of the Star Trek episodes here were perfect right after school. So as soon as you got out of school, you go home, you turn on Star Trek, and you watch that episode. I went so far as to, in the back of it, they had a listing of all the episodes in order, and I started putting little tick marks next to the ones that I saw, of course. Now I feel bad because I kind of ruined my book a little bit for myself. But either way, I've shrink wrapped that thing, and I said, this is a collectible that I'm never going to get rid of. And it's kind of on the top shelf of all my collectible stuff, just because
the Whitfield book.
The Whitfield book, just because that was the one that got me involved in it. I've also maintained all of that fascination with Star Trek. A story that I'd kind of like to relate that I found interesting for myself. A number of years later, I had married a lady that worked with the DMV. And she said, she knew I was a huge Star Trek fan, of course, from the point we met. She says, "Do you know a lady that was a producer for Star Trek, the original series?" And I'm thinking to myself, I guess, yeah, I'm pretty sure I do. I said, "Do you know what her name is?" D.C. Fontana.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, certainly I know who that is. I had the opportunity to get together with Dorothy and her husband, and we actually managed to meet each year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I've become good friends with her. I talked to her specifically because I was interested in writing at the time, and kind of got a little guidance from her whether I wanted to do, for instance, maybe Star Trek novels or something along those lines. And what she actually told me when we started talking about television and movie production is that the screenplay is the thing. It's not the actor who makes that character, and that actor might bring him to life, but it's the writer who makes that character, because you put the words into that person's mouth. You have the direction of where that person goes, what that person does. So literally what she told me was, you are the person who's making this show by being the screenwriter. Again, that clicked for me too. So as an amateur screenwriter, I like to play with that a little bit. I've played with even writing some Star Trek stuff. I know nothing is going to sell. I know that, there's a huge industry of the way that it works out there, and an amateur person like myself has probably slim to none chance.
Right.
However, now with some of the things that are available out there, like CBS allowing for the 15-minute fan films, those are things that I can always go and put myself into to try and bring about my love of what I want to do, tell the story. Everybody's got their little pet peeve, and I think that that's a good way to air it, is into an episode that way, and maybe bring both sides. Might be tough to do in a 15-minute spot.
Right.
But it's something, again, that keeps me involved with Star Trek in particular.
But you can make a ton of them.
Yeah, exactly. In 15 minutes, you could write something pretty quick, honestly.
So have you seen all 700 and something hours of Star Trek?
I have seen basically anything that has the name Star Trek attached to it. I'm not one of those who says, J.J. Abrams and the reboot, I don't like it. I look at it this way. If I want to be a Star Trek fan, I have to accept everything that comes down the line from these folks, because this is the way it's going to be now. Even though I may not like it, that's the way it's going to be. So I will watch anything that has to do with it. I've been a fan of, all the series, all the movies. I've read probably the vast majority of the novels. I can't say I've hit every one of them. And I got a number of different collectibles that I picked up over the years as well.
What's your favorite item you have in your collection, besides the Whitfield book? You already told us about.
The Whitfield book, yeah. I have. I had a number. I think I had all of them actually, of the master replicas that was out for Star Trek, and unfortunately, I had to raise some money, so I turned around having to sell the vast majority of those. But the one that was my favorite that I held on to was the Klingon Disruptor. Nice. So I still have the Klingon Disruptor. It's the one from the original series. They're a little pricey because they're a collector's item. They don't make them anymore. You can find them on eBay, but they're rather pricey, as I said. And I only hold that one because it was the first one that I bought and was the favorite of the ones that I bought.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's something that I've kept for quite a while. The other thing that I had to do with Star Trek 2, not Star Trek 2 the movie, but Star Trek as well, is I've kind of liked the mentality of the way that everything is operated, very semi-militaristic in terms of the methodology, almost like a military organization. And the only reason I bring that up is because I'm actually retired law enforcement.
Okay.
And during that period of time, I became a supervisor for the agency that I was with.
Which agency?
I was with the Nevada Highway Patrol.
Okay.
And when I was with them for that period of time, sometimes there would be things as a supervisor that you have to make decisions for those employees under you. And when I had loss of maybe how do I want to proceed with this, I took a step back mentally and I thought, well, how would Kirk handle something like this?
What would Kirk do?
What would Kirk do? Exactly.
He would give a Kirk speech.
Yeah, almost. And, I never quite got up and did the, we're out here for risk.
Risk is our business.
I never did anything along those lines, but I did try and consider all the different options in terms of the way to manage those guys. But I did like to fall back to how did Kirk handle something like that, if that was applicable.
Nice.
And so because of that, it had kind of helped me out a little bit too. I never shied away from trying to say that I was a Star Trek fan, particularly as I got younger, or as I got older, I should say.
Right.
When I was younger, that was a different story. It was a different time. We're talking about the 70s, maybe even the early 80s that I was in high school and so on and so forth. And my God, the last thing that you would want to do at that time is to admit that you were a Star Trek fan.
Oh, absolutely. It was
because
of marking yourself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This guy's a nerd, and all the football jocks would be after you, and they were talking about their cars and so on and so forth. Well, as time went on and things got older, people didn't talk about cars anymore. They started talking about their computers.
Yes.
And it was a male, how big is my computer? How fast is your processor? That kind of a thing, instead of talking about your cars. So at that point, it became a little more acceptable to say, I'm a Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
Now
it's out and proud.
It's mainstream.
Yeah.
It's mainstream. I don't think you can talk to anybody that doesn't say, I'm a little bit of a Star Trek fan, and doesn't have a problem admitting it. So it's nice to see that this is kind of, I don't want to say come out of the closet, but that it is much more acceptable for people to be able to say something like that. I found it's nice for me to be able to wear, for instance, the shirt that I'm wearing today.
You've got a great Mirror Spock shirt on. Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm wearing Klingon Chef.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah,
my Lee Sargent original. He's the artist who does these. He's on Twitter and he has a shop and you can buy his stuff. It's fantastic.
Excellent.
But Klingon Chef is my favorite minor character in all Star Trek. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But wearing something like this, as I said, 20, 25, 30 years ago, if I walked out in the street, people would be maybe giggling behind my back or
be
pointing.
mocking you.
Or, Exactly. And now it's nice to know that I can go out and people will say, I like that episode. Or I know who that guy is, or something along those lines. So even at a shop like this here, this shows that there's a lot of camaraderie with all these people to show up at the same place for a fundraiser or whatever it might be that's going on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that this has actually done for me in terms of being a fan of this. I think it's kind of helped me develop myself a little bit, certainly helped me in my career, and has given me something to, if you have a bad day, to go home and watch an episode and say, you know what, that's pretty good. And you feel a little bit better about things.
What episode of Star Trek is the most meaningful to you? Notice I didn't ask you what the best one was.
Yeah, no, I have that.
And the movies are included in that. Which one do you feel is the one that speaks to you the most?
Wow. That's really tough to quantify something like that. Like I say, I'm familiar with everything across all the iterations of this show. I mean, certainly I would, if I could break it down maybe and go into, let's just say, the original series as a start. I think one of my favorites there, and to say the top is really tough to do.
Well, if you want to give me a couple, you can.
Well, okay. Certainly Mirror, Mirror, like the shirt that I'm wearing, that was enjoyable just for the entertainment value, because now we have space pirates, and that's essentially what they were. And all the actors got an opportunity to play something different that they didn't get to do.
Something totally different.
Exactly. So that was a lot of fun. I certainly like that one. I like the Doomsday Machine.
Sure.
That's a good character study again, and we're looking at a Moby Dick type of a story. Everything's got a little meaning back there behind it. Some of them better than others. For instance, if I go into the Next Generation, certainly I enjoy the alien race of the Borg. Mm-hmm. I think that was probably one of the better races that they came up with, just because of you have the potential to become a zombie-like entity out there and no control over whatever. And it's a fear that a lot of people have. A big business, controlling them, so on and so forth. And that's kind of a simile in that way to what they're talking about.
I thought what made them especially brilliant is that they were just the literal mirror opposite of this whole exploratory Federation thing.
Exactly.
We don't want to meet with you and learn from you. We don't want to coexist with you. Right. Our only job is to take over.
They're the ultimate user of the resource, is what they are. They use everything and waste nothing. And it's something that the Federation that had been presented in the show obviously is not anywhere near that. So these are the penultimate bad guys that you can come up with. There's other races, certainly, that can do the same kind of thing, that are threats. But I like the Borg because I like the idea of incorporating the technology as well. Again, I could go through all the shows and name some favorites. I don't know that there's any one show that affected me in terms of an epiphany to say, wow. I just like the entertainment value, and I like the subtext of what's buried in most of those too.
If you had a friend who said, well, I've never watched any Star Trek, what episode should I watch? What would you recommend?
That would be tough to do. I would try and, if that person was that interested and really wanted me to show, I would probably try and give them schooling, No, I'm too busy. I just got time for one episode. Just give me one episode to watch. I'm getting on a plane here. I can download one episode before I go. I would probably start them with an original series, a very early one, something like maybe the Corbomite Maneuver. Mm-hmm. That would probably be an introduction to the show because it was for most of the people that are out there. When it first came out, that was probably one of the most solid that they did of one of the first few broadcasts that were out there. Certainly there's some other good stories there too, but it was a good character study in that one. Mm-hmm. You got to see different facets of the three main characters throughout. And as a viewer, having never seen it before, this was a threat, this giant, huge ship. Yeah. And turns out that it was nothing.
Yeah, and the two episodes you make reference to, the Doomsday Machine and Corbomite Maneuver, are actually the two episodes, in my opinion, that got the most benefit from the remasters.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It just looks so great now.
Doomsday Machine, I got to say, for the time in the 60s when they filmed it, and having spoken with Dorothy, and I don't try and geek out with her too much when I do that, but, I do ask a question here or there. When they did that, it was on such a tight budget that they had a very small thing that they could do, but it came out to look good on the show. Yeah. Now, the remastered, that thing is huge when you see it compared to the size of the Enterprise, which it should be.
It should have been.
Yeah, exactly. It was just a limitation as to the money they had at the time. We see the same thing with all of the shows, unfortunately. Next Generation, when they introduced the Borg and Q Who. They are Lycra suits that have got a little bits of blinkies on them, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. Now you go forward to First Contact, and there the Borg have been done well.
So, Rick, I know that we're short on time because you said you had to go. But I want to ask you, what is Star Trek to you?
It's a vision of the future. It's a hope that people will be able to live together without having to worry about poverty. They'll all have something to do. Crime is not non-existent, but certainly it's not as prevalent as it may be in certain places nowadays. It is hope for the people that things will work out. It's a sense of exploration. I'm a big advocate of the space program. I think many of the Star Trek fans probably are, because as far as I'm concerned, yes, we should be out there. It's not going to be as sanitized as we may see on TV. It's going to be dangerous, but it's where we need to go. So I see Star Trek as a hope that this may be how things will work out someday.
Fantastic. Rick, thank you for being on Trek Profiles.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Incoming transmission.
All right, and I'm here with Mark. Now, Mark, you are the proprietor of this establishment, are you not?
Yes, I am. I'm the sole owner of A&M Collectible Toys and Comics. on 10 West Wyoming and Las Vegas, Nevada. Top floor, Sin City Pickers, Antique Mall.
All right. And are you a Star Trek fan?
Yes.
How long have you been a Star Trek fan?
Over a year. Not too long, but I grew up with the older stuff, and we are also part of the USS Las Vegas, the largest active Star Trek club in Nevada.
And what, so obviously you're a collector.
My collection is here, and it's all for sale.
So this is all stuff that you personally own?
Yes.
I mean, because this is like, there are many rooms here of many, many things.
Correct.
Wow, it's quite extensive. How did you start into collecting?
My wife passed away in 2010, and I needed something to do. I've had some medical issues and stuff, so I started doing sports memorabilia at the swap meet and came here. I met a gentleman at the flea market here in town, and I had toys, and he bought me out. And I said, well, what do you do with this stuff? He said, I sell on Amazon, so game on. So I'd hunt collections, and I helped out his house, and then I opened up my own site, started coming here picking, and took a small booth, and after a while, it just grew.
What is your favorite item that you have in your collection?
Right now, it's probably the Mego Star Trek figures, the 12-inch.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the full set?
Yes, I do.
Nice. And is that here? Can we go look at it later?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's great. Now, you've also got Star Wars. You've got like all the fandoms in here.
Correct.
Yeah. What percentage of it is Star Trek?
Probably a quarter of it, or a little less than a quarter. I have a whole room dedicated to Star Trek.
What is the most unusual Star Trek related item in the collection?
Not so much unusual, but probably the rarest is your carded Mego figures from the 70s because they're hard to come by.
Which ones?
The Mego.
Okay.
Mego figures.
So that's part of your whole set there.
Right.
Good. Did you ever wear a costume or a uniform?
I do at conventions. I jump into an Enterprise flight suit.
And is Enterprise particularly meaningful to you, or is that just the uniform you like the best? Why that?
Correct. I flew with the 72nd Aerovac out of McGuire, so I'm kind of a military person, so that fits my persona.
Oh, the flight suit?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. You go to the convention every year?
I do Super Toy Con. I do toy conventions. I do go to the Star Trek convention with the club this past year, but I don't get a vendor's booth there.
Okay. Why do you go back to the convention? What's in it for you?
The toy conventions are fun, and you meet a lot of different people from all over, and you have fun. You meet celebrities and all of that.
Right. So why the Star Trek convention?
I only been there once with the club to promote the shop. It was an inlet or an outlet for me to promote the shop here.
Okay. If I was going to be getting on a plane and I told you I have a few minutes to download an episode to watch on the plane, and I've never seen Star Trek before, what episode should I watch?
I would probably start out with the original when it first came out.
And which episode would you pick?
Probably start from the beginning when it first started.
With the man trap?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Do you have a social media presence or a website that people should know about if they want to see your collection?
I don't have a social media presence, but I'm here, and the shop is open here 7 days a week, 10 to 5.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for being on Trek Profiles.
You're welcome.
Incoming transmission.
All right, and I'm here with Charles. Charles, are you a Star Trek fan?
I am. I am actually the historian for the USS Las Vegas. I am also one of the co-hosts of Blog Talk Radio's Trek Talking, where we talk every Thursday about Star Trek, sci-fi, and anything in general.
Oh, fantastic. How long have you been a Star Trek fan?
I've been following Trek since the reruns of the original series. I saw the Star Trek The Motion Picture actually in the theater, first run. And I've been following it the whole time.
Have you seen all of Star Trek, all 700-something hours?
I have not seen all of them. I still got to catch up a little bit on Enterprise, and I got a couple of movies I haven't really kept up on.
Okay, are you current with Discovery and everything?
I am currently with Discovery. In fact, that's one of our discussions every week is We're talking about Discovery. We're talking about the shorts. We're talking about the news. We're keeping up with anything going on Discovery.
Do you collect anything? I see you got some Star Trek shipyard stuff you got here with you.
I got talked to Wednesday. Why didn't I bring the new book in? I couldn't find where I put it. So, yes, I dug it up so one of the members could see the book this time. So, yes, I do collectibles. I also like the books like Shipyard as research material.
Okay.
If I want to look up details about a specific items, it's one like this, the encyclopedias, which are great to get to, but I also collect different things at different points.
So I see you got, so you're a ship collector.
I do collect ships. This is part of Eagle Moss, and I actually been in the Eagle Moss club for a couple of years. So I've been getting the ships in as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I also play a miniatures game called Star Trek Attack Wing, where we play with different ships, so I can get a little more research on individual ships and their history and their time frames.
Oh, cool.
Especially if you want to work in a campaign where we want to sit with a certain time period.
Oh, so you want to make sure that the ships are in that time period, so you're doing like in-period battles and stuff.
Exactly. You want to stick with maybe the TOS era, make sure you've got the proper ships. Also, I've been trying to get through different campaigns of Star Trek Adventures, which is a role-playing game. And you want to put a specific time period. You're going to put that ship in. Oh, I'm curious what other ships are out there at that same time period.
Do you play Star Trek Online? Have you given that a shot?
A little bit with Star Trek Online. I don't do a whole lot of console. Though I have played a little bit with Star Trek Adversaries as well.
So that's the card game, right?
That's the card game online. Been playing with that a little bit. Learned about that at Star Trek Convention here in Las Vegas.
Okay. So you go to the convention.
I've been to 2 recently. I went through several back when they first hit Vegas.
Oh, good, good. Did you do you cosplay at all?
A little more in costume, but just kind of themed costume. I've done a little bit of cosplay occasionally.
You might have seen me in my cosplay.
What were you doing?
Oh, I have to show you a picture because I'm the kind of guy you wouldn't forget this if you'd seen it.
Yes, I do actually think I remember that one at the convention.
So anyway, I get a kick out of showing that picture to people because for some reason, even though it's just me with makeup on, people have never recognized me.
Still, especially Star Trek Las Vegas, there is so many costumes out there.
Yes.
You got to this year, I got to sit and actually watch this year's stage competition.
Right.
And there were some seriously good. When you look at the judges, and the judges sit there, it's like they want more details. Like, you've done great work.
Yeah, no, they had it's always people who are seriously into it right now. I mean, I'm not at that level. I can get some makeup put on and put on an outfit, but
right.
I don't have the ability or the craftiness to make some of that stuff, and I'm just in awe of those people. But yeah, so fantastic. So why do you like going to the convention?
I want to keep up with what's going on with Star Trek. This year, especially, was the fact that I wanted to be there representing not only the club, but representing the podcast as well. And 2 different sessions, I got immediate news right on the floor. I was immediately posting it on the Facebook page saying, okay, hey, we're getting a Picard series. The DVDs are coming out. I was literally feeling we were one of the first groups that actually was getting it out there to our members that, hey, this stuff's coming out there. This is breaking news. I'm not sitting at home catching it on Facebook. I'm right there as it hits.
Nice.
And I really want to know, what was Discovery doing? What are we going to expect for season 2?
What do you think is the most meaningful episode of Star Trek for you personally? Notice it's not hot. It's not the best. I didn't ask you what you think the best one is, but which episode is the most meaningful to you?
One of them that I commonly come to back and forth on a regular basis is Star Trek TNG's Measure of a Man. Data goes on trial. Is he considered human? Because what do we consider human? What do we consider human rights?
So I was having a conversation online with some people about this episode, and my take on it is that it's not a Data episode. It's primarily a Picard episode because it's really about him. and it's his story. And then to a lesser degree, it's a Riker episode, and like Data would probably be in the third spot in a way, even though he's the subject of the episode, but it's not really about him in a way.
I see it more as it's a discussion of humanity. What is life? I don't see it as the two. I see it's more like Data and what is life? How do we need to respect, consider what's life and what's property? Mm-hmm. What direction? A second one that comes to mind, I can't think of the title of the episode, was when Keiko was teaching in the school in DS9, mm-hmm. and the Bajorans wanted to back away because she wouldn't teach religion.
Right, yeah, that was pretty early on, I think. Yeah, that was pretty early on.
That was early on.
Yeah.
But is it acceptable to teach a single religion to a group of people from different religions?
Right, it wasn't a religious school, right?
It wasn't.
It was a school for the kids on the station.
It was a school for what didn't focus on its specific religion, and yet the Bajorans got upset because you weren't teaching the prophets.
What is Star Trek?
Star Trek is us giving a chance to look at humanity. We're seeing at different points of view, different focuses, different ideals. We get to see what humans and what maybe humans from other planets would be like, what really it is being out there, looking at other worlds, looking back at our own world and seeing what's going on in our own, literally for our own communities, our own country, our own areas, our own planet, what's going on.
Charles, tell people where they can find your podcast.
We're on Blog Talk Radio. You can find our Facebook page, Trek Talking. You can also find us currently on iTunes, and we're trying to get through some of the other podcast hosting as well. But we do the show live Thursday nights, 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern. We go on for about 2 hours. We do it live. We do have call-in ability, so anybody wants to call in and talk to us, talk about the subject, have something else they want to bring up and talk about.
Charles, thank you for being on Trek Profiles.
Thank you very much for letting me come and join you.
Incoming transmission.
All right, and I'm live here with Linda. Linda, are you a Star Trek fan?
Oh, yes.
How long have you been a Star Trek fan?
I started watching it in the 70s and been a fan ever since.
What do you like best about Star Trek?
I like the positive attitude that people can work together and that there's a better future for us and make everything better.
So I see you're wearing a Deep Space Nine command era command uniform.
Yeah.
So is that your favorite?
Yes. Well, actually, this is the my uniform from the fan film I'm making.
Oh, so tell me about that.
It's called My Enemy, My Friend. And we're aboard the USS Las Vegas, which is a Voyager class ship. And we need to find a new planet. And we're searching for a deserted planet. And we go to a planet that we think is deserted. And lo and behold, a Romulan's there.
Okay, now why are they searching for a deserted planet?
Because in a Next Gen episode, a colony was destroyed by the crystalline entity.
Right.
And so they needed a new colony.
Oh, I see.
For the people to colonize. So we're searching for that. So we go find it, and we happen to find a Romulan deserted on this planet. And then you'll have to watch and see what happens with the Romulan.
All right, fantastic. So how far along are you in getting your film done?
We've filmed about 3/4 of it.
Oh, fantastic.
So, we're getting there.
Where can people find it online?
I'm gonna put it up on YouTube, hopefully in January.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we'll look forward to that. And I'll put a link up to it in all my social media for Trek Profiles when it's out.
Okay, great.
So are you a collector at all?
I used to be, but not so much anymore. But I do have all of the novels.
All the novels?
All the novels.
There's like hundreds of them.
Hundreds. Yes, I have like 300 books in my library.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
And I've read most of them.
Yeah, well, as somebody famous once said, who wants a library full of books you've already read, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
want to have some you haven't.
Yeah,
It's actually
read.
funny because as we record this last night, I was taking my kid somewhere, and he had to have a pair of sneakers, and he forgot to pack sneakers.
Oh no!
So and they needed to be old clothes because he was going to get dirty, and so we stopped at a Savers. And I picked him up a used pair of sneakers for this activity because he was going paintballing, right? So he didn't want to bring anything he wanted to keep, right? It had to be junky stuff. So I bought a pair of junky old sneakers for him, and I went in and they had a whole thing of Star Trek books. So I picked up like 5 or 6 of them, and had a great deal on them. Yeah, so who knew Savers was the place for Trek fans?
Yeah. So I still read the books once in a while.
Fantastic. Have you seen all of it?
Seen all of it? Yes.
All of Star Trek? All
I
700
have
something hours?
I have them all on DVD.
Oh, nice.
I have the animated series, the classic, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise.
So if I was your friend and I told you that I'd never seen Star Trek before, and you get to give me one episode to watch, just one, what would it be?
Just one, it would have to be the cage. The cage, the pilot.
The two-parter. You're going to cheat on me.
Yeah, so they can... That's the best one that describes what Star Trek is about.
Don't do that on the table. You can put your hand on the table. Just make sure not to pound it because it'll get picked up on the mic. That's all right. No worries. It's all good. So now the cage, that's interesting. That is, I suspect a lot of people would not guess that. So why would you pick the cage?
Because it orientates them to Star Trek. It lets them know what it's about, and it's the first one. So it would get them into it, and then I could show them all the rest of the Star Treks.
So would you show them actually the cage, or would you show them the menagerie?
The cage. The cage. Right,
yeah, so you don't want like the Spock trial stuff.
No.
Forget that, right? We're just going to watch
that's okay. Just, go with the original, the cage. And it was kind of a feeling of you're actually flying in the ship at the beginning. They open up on the ship and go into the ship, and that was kind of neat.
Okay.
Makes you feel like you were flying, and so you get the idea of what Star Trek's all about. And the mental, I like the mental thing of it, that the Telosians, that they use their mental powers to entertain themselves, basically.
Right. They actually live vicariously.
Yeah, they
through
live
others.
different lives.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the holodeck, but
it's
not,
real.
It's
real.
With the mind.
Yeah.
Not technology. So anyway, that's interesting too. Things you can do with the mind.
So are
and
you
get them hooked on Star Trek, and then I'd watch the rest of Star Trek with them.
Are you excited about Captain Pike being in Discovery Season 2?
Yeah, that seems interesting. I'm not quite sure how they're going to do that because we know he's in charge of the Enterprise. But I guess he just takes over Discovery for a little while and will help them. So we'll see. We'll see. Good. It looks good.
What episodes of Star Trek are most meaningful to you? Notice it's not best, right? You can think that another episode is the best episode, but are there any episodes that you say this is my
one is it's a movie actually. Sure. It was the one with Sybok.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sybok,
Final Frontier.
Final Frontier, and Sybok was showing all the crew their fears.
Yes.
So they overcome their fears, and he could kind of brainwash them. Well, I had a fear at the time that was similar to one of them, and it kind of helped me to think about it and work that issue through in my own mind. And that, like, it was the scene where McCoy, his father's sick, and McCoy takes him off life support to put him out of his misery.
Yes.
And dealing with his guilt over how he feels like he killed his father. but he did the best he could at the time.
Sure.
So that kind of helped me work through an issue with guilt, that I did the best I knew at the time. So that was pretty meaningful for me. Of course, the cage that I was mentioning, because that got me into it. That really hooked me.
Now, when did you start watching Star Trek?
I think I actually started watching the cartoon in the 70s.
Okay.
And then I went back and watched the classics.
The cartoon is quite subversive. I mean, when you just think about, they put this thing out for kids to watch on Saturday mornings.
Yeah, but it was a lot more in depth than for kids. There was a lot more to it. The stories were really good. In fact, my favorite on that is
Yesteryear?
Yeah, Yesteryear.
Right, where we go back to Spock's childhood.
Spock goes back in time to save himself.
Yeah.
That was really a good one. And I also liked it because they could have more extreme aliens with the animation.
Yeah, like Lieutenant Eric's with his 3 arms.
Yeah, I was thinking Lieutenant Eric's and Ensign Moress.
Yeah, the cat lady.
Oh, I have a cat officer on my bridge on my fan film. Mm-hmm. Her name is Morale.
Nice.
So, and I got an Andorian, we got an Orion, a Klingon, a Bajoran, now a Romulan. So we got a lot of different species now working together.
So I see that in addition to your uniform, you're actually wearing an IDIC pendant.
Yes, I really believe in the IDIC.
And why
philosophy.
do you believe in that? What does it mean to you?
What it means to me is that people can be different and still work together and cooperate. We can enjoy each other's differences and accept the differences and still care about each other and work together. I really believe in the IDIC philosophy.
All right, great. So where should people watch for your fan film? Is there a particular place, like right now, where they can follow the progress until it's on YouTube?
Right now, you can follow the progress at our meetings, the USS Las Vegas meetings.
Oh, okay. Because most of my people are online, so they're not here. So I don't know if if there's some place they should go to check it out.
I think it's usslasvegas.org.
Oh, the website for the group?
Or the USS Las Vegas on Facebook.
Okay.
Occasionally, if someone put up a scene there that we just shot. Or like I said, come to the meetings, and I usually show an update of what we've filmed so far. We meet on the third Wednesday of every month at Blueberry Hill on Flamingo and Decatur.
Thank you very much, Linda, for being on Trek Profiles.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Incoming transmission.
And boom, we're live. And you are?
Paul Walker. I am the Admiral and founder of the USS Las Vegas Star Trek Fan Club, Nevada's largest and most active Star Trek fan club.
You seem very emphatic about that part.
It's a labor of love and a lot of work that went into doing that. We have done a lot of community projects through the years. Our club has prospered in many ways with the community, and it is a nice attribute to know how we started 12 years ago. It'll be 13 years in January 2019 to how far we've come. We started with one official member, one official meeting date, and we have become what we have. And I cannot be more prouder and more happier than I am with the club that I've got and the members and the people that attend every month, month after month after month.
You are a Star Trek fan, then, I presume.
Star Trek? What the heck? Yes, I would like to say I am a Star Trek fan. I got hooked up on the show back in the 1970s through the animated series. And then it came out in the motion picture. And I remember being at a cousin's house in San Diego, California area when the motion picture was playing at a local cinema near them, and I had to go see it. The rest is history. I've been hooked ever since. I have an apartment that is wall to wall to wall to wall Star Trek.
Okay.
I'm proud to say that I'm only one of 2 people in the entire planet that we call Earth that has an original Admiral's Collection sign that used to hang in front of the Admiral's Collection of Star Trek The Experience on my wall. Only 2 of them were made for Star Trek The Experience. One of them went to auction for over $3,000, and I have the second one, and there's no more on the planet.
Very nice.
Would you call that a little obsessive? Nah.
So, what is your first Star Trek memory? It's watching the show in the 70s, the animated series?
I was born in 1964, so I couldn't appreciate it, in 66, 67.
Yeah, you would have been too young.
I would have been too young, obviously. But as I got older, the Saturday morning cartoon shows, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner Hour and Speed Buggy, and oh my God, I'm dating myself.
It's all right.
I'm only dating myself because nobody else will. No, I just remember those shows in the 70s, the old Emergency +4 based on the Emergency TV series in the 70s. And then Star Trek came out. And I'm like, hey, this is pretty interesting. This is pretty cool. So I watched it for the 22 episodes that they did.
Yeah.
And started, buying small, books or something at the time, whatever I could find. And then the Star Trek, the motion picture came out in 1979. And from that point, I was hooked, on the crew of the USS Enterprise.
As we record this, have you seen all 700 and something hours of Star Trek?
At one time or another, I'd like to say yes. Whether I remember, whether them all in detail, probably not. But I do remember, I watched the original series more, Next Generation more. DS9 I was getting into. It became serialized, and for several years, it kind of lost my interest. But then I got back into it, and then of course Voyager came out, and then our Star Trek Club was doing good, and we were introduced. To various Star Trek celebrities, where Rob Ricardo, the doctor from Voyager, came to our Star Trek Club meeting twice and Skyped in once. We've had Manu Intirami come in for a visit. We've had Dr. Trek, Larry Nemeczek, drop by on several occasions to join us for a club meeting once a month. And it's a labor of love. It's a fun thing to be a part of and to say, wow, we've come this far.
So you talked about the fact that you have that Admiral sign from the Experience that's in your home. And obviously having a large collection, there has to be lots of different pieces and parts. So we already talked about the sign. So putting that aside for the minute, what's your favorite piece of the collection?
Oh, too hard to mention. We all collect different things. A lot of people like to collect the action figures. Okay. So like Rob Ricardo's action figures, so he can go play with himself. Robert Picardo also made a acrylic head face of himself that revolves around in a circle. And his joke line was, when he was trying to offer these at Star Trek Experience, these crystal heads, everybody likes a little head in the bedroom. I do hope this is for a G audience or a PG audience.
It's all right, man. It's whatever you want it to be.
It's okay. We all collect different things. I don't collect the action figures. I don't collect the trading cards because there's so much out there. What I collect is the memorabilia of like press releases, unique things that there's not that many of. For example, I used to work for a movie theater chain, Regal Entertainment Group, many years ago, where I was a promotions manager. And doing that, we did many Star Trek events. When Star Trek Nemesis came out, I threw a humongous movie event here in Las Vegas at 2 different theaters at the same time. Other movies came out, I did the same thing. So I collected...
You got like the cardboard cutouts and stuff?
I don't do the cutouts, but I do the posters, the bus sides that would fit inside a bus shelter. When Nemesis came out, I made an agreement with my general manager at the time. I said, listen, I'll throw you the world's biggest Star Trek event, because he knew I was a major Star Trek fan. And I'll bring stuff from my own collection. We'll put on display in the lobby. And one of the things I did at this movie event for Nemesis is, if you go into a movie theater, they all have these posters on display for upcoming movies. I took them all down and put up every movie poster that was made. Star Trek the Motion Picture, Star Trek 2, Star Trek 3, Star Trek 4, and all the movie cases for the entire weekend. We did an event at Village Square when the 2009 reboot movie came out. With
Village
Carl
Square.
Urban and Chris Pine when they were introduced as characters. And I did a 3-day movie event where I brought in major sponsors from Kellogg's, from Mattel, from USAopoly, when they were promoting all the newest Star Trek merchandise. And I asked Mattel, when I made contact with their sales rep and their company, would you like to take part? Because they were official sponsors. I'd like to put a couple of units on display for demos, and I'll give away a couple, for a raffle or something. Unbeknownst to me, they shipped 400 cases with 5 in a case to the movie theater. Everybody got one.
And what were they?
It was at the time Star Trek, the DVD game, Star Trek Seen It.
Oh, right. Okay, I have that.
Right. Well, I wanted to do a premiere because they were just releasing that version because they had Cheers, they had Taxi, they had Star Trek Seen It, whatever. This was their Star Trek license. And I thought they were going to send me 2 or 3, and whatever. They sent me, like I said, 400 cases with 5 in a case to give away over a weekend. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely shocked.
Well, it's funny you bring this up because I am not a collector. I mean, I've been a lifelong fan, but it's not a bug that's really just got me for whatever reason. So I never felt the need to buy a lot of stuff. But every now and then something gets me, right?
Right.
And when I was at STLV, I think 2 years ago, the Nimoy family had their little store there.
Right.
Shop LLAP. And they had a custom Spock artwork that they were doing that I bought, which I really liked. And earlier this year, I saw, this is the kind of thing I rarely, if ever, do, but the Bob Peak Gallery, Bob Peak, the guy who did a lot of the 70s movie posters.
Correct.
He did the motion picture original poster. And his gallery was releasing a limited series seriograph. I think there was only like 500 of them that they were going to make. And I was like, I got to have that. Because I loved motion picture so very much. I probably didn't love it as much when I first saw it when I was like you.
Yeah,
when I was 9.
When I first saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture, it ran a little long.
Yeah, but now I love it.
It reminded me of 2001: Space Odyssey.
Well, that was what it was intended
because
to be.
Because 2001: Space Odyssey, that movie was drawn out because it was so slow. It was
very intellectual and sort of thoughtful.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how the motion picture came to me. But I was still hooked on it. Because it was still involving the crew of the USS Enterprise and what happened to them, how they became what they were, and then of course you get the books, which are some are canon, some are not. To fill in the gaps of the history of the characters, what they've done. And it's nice to keep up with the crew. But, with me, I collect the unique stuff. One of the other things I like so much in my collection, I collect glassware. Okay. That I can put on display. When Burger King was an official partner of the movie, I got everything they offered. When Del Taco was a partner in Nemesis, I got everything they offered.
So, here's a little trivia point for you. The Happy Meal was invented, and the very first Happy Meal was Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember that. And unfortunately, I did not get into the collectibles at that point.
Yeah, I probably bought
but
that.
I wish I could have and still have it. I mean,
I would love it now.
If somebody has one today, I'm sure it's worth $1 or $2. Multiply that by a few hundred. If it's, for that specific one, because that is the very first Happy Meal that McDonald's did create. Absolutely, based on the motion picture. They were the first corporate partner in a Star Trek feature film promotional deal. And it was just such fun to do these events and put the negotiations and do the events and execute them. That's just one of the things that our club has done over the 13 years. We have been involved with PropWorks when Star Trek The Experience closed. We were asked at the last minute by the general manager, would you like to participate in our closing ceremony on September 1st, 2008. Now, our club also worked with Jerry Lewis, the legendary comic, with his MDA telethon. We would answer phones on Sunday afternoons or Sunday evenings on the first night of the telethon for the local Las Vegas market. We'd go in and help Jerry Lewis and contribute that way.
For KLVX, right?
Yeah, for KLAS. Right, the TV station on Channel 8. And on that same weekend, we were asked at the last minute, would you like to help with the closing ceremonies? How fast can I say yes? They couldn't even ask the question and get it out before I would agree. And if you watch Star Trek Generations movie set, one of the re-releases of it, on the special features on the Evolutions disc, they filmed the entire closing ceremony.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Promotional. Well, look in the background. Not speaking roles, but look for the red and blue shirts. You'll see...
That's you guys?
You'll see the Admiral, myself. You'll see our captain, Robert Niwa. You'll see members of our club helping in the background with security, with crowd control. I was escorting the actors, showing them how to, when they walk down to get their trinkets and awards, where to go off stage. You'll see us in the background, and that's professionally done. You can't take that away. It's out there, you know. So we're there. My God, how can you top that? Like I was saying earlier, PropWorks called me out of the blue. I didn't call them; they called me and said, "Hey, my name is Alec Peters. I run PropWorks.com. It's an auction house out of California, and I've been commissioned by CBS to sell what was left of the Star Trek assets." Well, the biggest question in Las Vegas history, or Star Trek history, for 2 years is whatever became of everything that was inside Star Trek The Experience when it closed. You know, if you know the history of the story, they closed on September 1st, and the Hilton at the time, it's no longer the Hilton, it's now the Westgate,
right.
But the Hilton at the time said, okay, you guys are closed, you're done, you've got till December 31st, clear it out.
Yeah,
we want it off our property. We don't care how, we don't care where, get it out of here, you're closed. Because the original business partnerships were all gone. So they hired Cedar Fair, which owned Star Trek, out of Sandusky, Ohio, the parent company, hired a demolition crew and said, gut the place like a fish, you know, clean it out. So it all ended up in a warehouse over off of Charleston and Mojave on the east side of Las Vegas for 2 years, but nobody knew about it. Nobody. There was no signage, obviously. There was nothing. So this
why would there be, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So when he calls me and says, "Hey, I'm putting together a warehouse sale, you know, of all the assets of what was left of Star Trek: The Experience. Would you like to help?" Again, how fast can you say yes? Okay. So I put a crew together, and they got ahead so much in the game. I had about 10 or 15 people from the crew help out over the weekend, and that's how I ended up with the Star Trek sign, because we helped them so efficiently that they offered that to me for helping them out and getting them all the help. And they were selling Quarks tables and chairs. They were selling retail merchandise displays.
Were they selling those warp core breach glasses?
Glassware? Yep, absolutely. They were selling glass displays, you know, that were 10 or 12 feet tall. They had all kinds of glass Translite panels, you know, the touchscreen panels.
The
LCARS display panel. They were selling that. I mean, they had everything, and including the uniforms that the crew used to wear. And thanks to Vernon Wilmer, who is the unofficial archivist of Star Trek: The Experience, he was able to work with CBS to make sure that all these actors, himself, April Urbay,
Christian.
God, I can't think of his name. Kirsten.
That's
Kirsten and Richard Odin for CBS to officially give them back their official uniforms, because they all got their uniforms back to keep after all those years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So we were able to participate in that. Darren Julian, another auction house, came to town several months later, or maybe a year later, and he was doing a 2-week event at Planet Hollywood on the fabulous Las Vegas Strip. And he, in this event, Rod Roddenberry, the son of Gene Roddenberry, was donating to Darren Julian's auction his parents' estate furniture. The dining room set that Gene Major sat at every night for dinner, and all the fixins, all the trinkets from Gene Roddenberry's office, his Rolodex. Back in the day, the Rolodex, not the iPad,
right,
but the old-fashioned Rolodex,
yeah.
And just all kinds of things. And he also donated several gowns that Major wore as Loxana Troy that were on display. So he contacted me, or we found each other, and we were allowed to be docents, if you will, of the Star Trek Experience items. So for 2 weeks, I put a crew into Planet Hollywood from 9 o'clock in the morning till about 10 o'clock at night, being able to answer questions for the fans that were just walking around that museum, that open museum, if you will. We got to have fun with that for 2 weeks. I'm like, wow, So look at what all we've done, what all we've accomplished, and we got more to go. We'll do a premiere event in January, when Discovery comes out, the newest show, for the premiere episode, January 19th. We're putting something together for that. If the Star Trek 4 movie comes out, if and when, we're optimistic that Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth will agree to a new salary.
The suits have to do a bunch of negotiating.
Yep, absolutely. We'll do something again with the movie theaters.
But I want to come back to this because I don't think I got an answer to my question.
Okay.
Which was separating the Admiral sign. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite thing in the collection?
Tough question.
That's what we do here on TrekProfiles.
Thank you very much, because everything is everything. We've got the plates. I would have to say the promotions kits I get, the press kits I can find on eBay. I would have to say, how about 35 millimeter trailers that cannot be shown anymore?
Oh.
When I worked at DeRegal Entertainment Company, I was back in the day before they went digital.
Right.
You used to have trailers, or you still have trailers, but they were they had to be spliced into the major feature.
Right.
And I was given the trailers to Star Trek Nemesis and Star Trek Insurrection.
On 35 millimeter.
On 35 millimeter film.
Nice.
I can never show it because I don't have a 35 millimeter projector because the film is that wide.
Yeah, who knows who would even have that, right?
Exactly. And the trailer's like 2 minutes long, but I have them.
And it's not because,
you don't find it.
Yeah, if you want to see the trailer, you can see it digitally in a second, right? But it's really about having the physical object.
Right. I have the physical object. I actually can look at the film like this by rolling it out.
Pull it out. Yeah. For my listeners, he's stretching it out with his hands there.
Yep. So that would have to be one of my more unique collectibles.
That's
besides
beautiful.
the
thinking back on all of Star Trek, what episodes are most meaningful to you personally? That doesn't mean the best episodes, or even favorites. But what episodes touched you the most?
I liked the Doomsday Machine from the original series because you got to figure back in 1966 it was basically they called it an internal show, a canned show because it was all filmed inside sound stages and all that, and that had a lot of space action.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay,
yeah.
if you remember the episode, that's the one with the long torpedo tube, if you will.
Yeah, the Doomsday Machine.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, the great music.
Commodore Decker.
Right.
That hooked me immediately. I loved that episode. Obviously, I like who cannot love the Trouble with Tribbles. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's some kind of monster.
The Tribbles and Kirk being buried. I have two things to say. First, close that door. And I forget the other one. So, that was a very comedic episode. I mean, yep. I will be truthful and say, with every Star Trek series, there are good and bad episodes. It just happens in filming. Some episodes are going to be more popular with the fans. Some are going to be bad. And you're never going to please everybody. So, for Star Trek the original series, those are two of my favorites. Okay, because you go from drama to comedy.
How about 90s Trek?
90s Trek. Well, obviously, I liked Enterprise. Yesterday's Enterprise, because it introduced us to another Enterprise C, which closed the timeline a little bit, because you had Enterprise A, you've had Enterprise B from the movie Star Trek Generations, then you had Picard's Enterprise D. Well, they never talked about an Enterprise C, so here's that one particular episode that introduced that missing link to the Star Trek universe. I like that. I thought it was nice that they tied the universe together. So yesterday's Enterprise is very good to me. I like the Inner Light. Who can't not like the Inner Light? With the music and.
So let me ask you a question about that episode, because another listener brought this up, and we had a discussion about it that we didn't resolve. So I'm going to hit you with this, and I'm curious to see what you. I'll think try. About it. All my listeners would be familiar with the episode. So Picard has this experience. For 22 minutes, right?
He lived a lifetime in 22 minutes.
Right. Is the lifetime that he lived, was it a script that just played in his head, or was it actually more like a holodeck where he was able to make choices and influence the outcome?
Good question. Because he was a sensor of some sort from this probe got his attention, that zapped him, and he laid unconscious on the bridge, and living this life for 22 minutes. I think it was script, I would say script type thing. I don't think it was a holographic because this probe came to him.
Right. No, I'm not saying it was a holiday, but like
Right.
was it a choose your own adventure type story where like he could influence the outcome?
No,
or was it like a predetermined
I was
thing
predetermined. In my opinion, it was predetermined because the idea of their probe that they launched, which got Picard's attention, years later, was the fact that they wanted to show their life. Don't forget us. This is what we were. So that was script. It was like you were saying, designed. It wasn't something he could just change to do things on his own.
Do you think that those people, Bataille, Eileen, all those people that were actually in the show, were they actual real people or were they amalgams? So
No, I think they were real. I think they were real people
because
because this probe was launched to show people, to show the future. Don't forget us. Because you got to remember the time frame was Picard was living this lifespan from years and years and years ago in this one guy's life to where he was Captain Picard 100 years later. So I think the probe caught up with him. I think it was predestined, pre-designed, and he couldn't change it. It was what happened because it was history.
One of the things that I find most interesting to think about, and just as a thought exercise, right? I'm not going to put you on the spot with this, but I'm just going to put this out as a question maybe that if listeners want to tweet at us, they sure can. If we were faced with this, as we sit here.
Okay. 2019, almost.
What people and what environment, how could you even choose who you would pick to put into this program that we were going to make to say we're going to pick 3 people at a certain time and place to represent all of humanity? How could you even do it?
You could, right? In today's world, you just couldn't, But again, remember, Star Trek is 300 to 400 years in front of us. A lot can happen, with this generation. I won't be around in 300 years,
Right.
I wish I would love to see how Star Trek would become reality. And in fact, some ways it has.
No, I get what you're saying, and I appreciate it. My question was different, though. I'm asking if we were, I can't remember the name of the people on the planet.
And I can't
the Ressicans.
Yeah,
Right, and they were facing some cataclysm, right?
They were facing water shortages.
Right.
They were facing drought. They were facing all kinds of hardships.
They had to pick like 3 people and write a story to put into that probe to say this is all of our culture in this one experience. Mm-hmm. If we were faced with that same problem, you and I, and we've got to write a script and tell a story?
I don't think we could.
Right? How could you even go about such a thing? I don't
think we could.
I think that is such an impousable task. I couldn't even wrap my brain around what a challenge like that would be like.
But he lived this life of a husband, which became a grandfather. Mm-hmm. Daniel Stewart was playing his son.
Yep.
In the episode, and that is Patrick's son, Daniel. Mm-hmm. So it's basically this one family's life, and how Picard's character, into that family where he started generally accepting it that was his life, because the memories of the Enterprise were of him being Captain Picard were just getting further and further pushed back until it became so close that the probe was launching. And then that's when the Enterprise caught up to it. So in today's world, I don't think you could. I agree with you. I don't think it's. It's an impossible task. It's an impossible task because we're so in the ethics, morals, and standards have changed so much in the 24th century. Money, as Picard said, we don't use money in the 24th century. So you don't have the need for greed. You don't have the need for needs. You do things to better yourself. And
it's a beautiful thought.
And unfortunately, in the 21st century of 2019, people aren't bettering themselves. No. They're surviving. Yeah. Humanity is surviving, in my opinion, to get through to the next day. We're not trying, obviously the idea is to better yourself. Absolutely. But right now, if you look at our current headlines, our current world events and current events, people are so quick to do A, B, C, and D without thinking down the line. How is this going to affect humanity? How is this going to affect me? All they're thinking about is the me generation. Mm-hmm. It's all about me, protecting me, what's in it for me, and not try and just, help humanity and like they do in the 23rd and 24th century, because back then you weren't thinking of the me You were thinking of humanity, going forth with the ideals of we're not here for money. You don't get paid? Wow. But you're still doing a work for Starfleet.
So it's an interesting thing to think about from an economics perspective, because it's very clear that yes, the material needs are all met, right? Mm-hmm. No one's hungry. No one lacks a place to live.
Absolutely.
But there has to be a way to arbitrate other things like experiences. So, for instance, not everybody can be on the beach at Risa at the same time.
No.
Not everybody can have the same house on the same beach in Malibu, California, in Star Trek time.
Right. Sure.
So there has to be some way to determine who gets to live at that house, right? That's on the beach in Malibu, right? Kirk says he sold his house in Generations.
Right.
How did he sell it? Like, how did that actually happen? How does that all work? I don't know.
There are some inconsistencies, yes, that are not followed.
Yeah.
Part of the joy of it,
it's called the poetic licensing of filmmaking in Hollywood, that they have to kind of expand a little. And then, of course, the problem becomes following up with that, because what you say in one movie, and as Gene Roddenberry always said, and Rick Berman, the executive producer of Star Trek Everything after Gene passed away in 1991, was that if it was on television, if it was on film, on the big screen, that was canon. That was official. That was as encyclopedic as you could get. Then all the books started coming out, the hardbacks, the reference books, the paperback books that tie into storylines. Then he started expanding on those episodes and threads. Mm-hmm. And the original comment that Gene Roddenberry said was the books were never canon because they went off in so many different directions. William Shatner, who's a great author, great actor, he is the Shat, nothing but the Shat.
His Royal Shatness.
His Royal Shatness. Wrote a series of books about his return, to the character James Kirk. But that's not in the movies. He was killed off in Generations. Well, the next book he came out called The Return, or Ashes of Eden, I believe it is, resurrected him from the grave based on Borg technology and other things to bring him back, where then he was able to participate in events with Captain Picard and all that stuff. So how can you... That is not canon because it was never put on the screen. But yet there are some books that tie directly in to episodes. The original series captain of the Enterprise before Captain Pike was Captain Robert April.
Yep.
And the only time he was ever filmed was in an animated series.
And his name was in Discovery.
Right. And his name was mentioned in Discovery. So because they're tying it in. So they're using some of the books as canon, where some of them are not. So it's all a big game. It's all about how you mix and match it.
I have my own controversial opinion on this, which is that canon doesn't exist. It's just it's a fan invented concept, because even if you just take the original 78 episodes, even they're not consistent.
No, there's different. Continuity. Excuse me. Is very important in the world of the Star Trek universe for fans. They want everything to connect.
Yeah, but
they want everything to tie in, but there are times it doesn't. Producers, directors, writers, executive producers, whoever does these things, because there's over 700 hours of television, because there are 13 motion pictures.
Right.
And I don't want to include the reboot Into Darkness and Beyond as part of the saga, because that's in a different timeline. That's in the Kelvin timeline. But connecting everything and then trying to remember when you write a story, a Star Trek episode or movie or TV, that, this was said in the TNG era, you forget all these things. Even though you have Star Trek historians on set, they're supposed to remind you about all these things, and some of them do.
Oh, yeah.
There's still a lot of continuity mishaps.
I always felt like you have to take the show on its own terms, right? Star Trek never promised from the beginning that it was going to be internally consistent. That was just not something they ever promised. And so it doesn't bother me too much.
Wagon train to the stars.
Right. So when you see Picard, I think in one episode, I think it's an early TNG episode, he makes some offhand comment about, they used to have these things called flags. How hilarious, and it represented these nations.
Right.
And he's sort of mocking it, but then we see the Federation has flags and seals, and we see them on screen in the same show.
There's that continuity thing that somebody's not following.
Yeah, it's okay.
You have to take it for what it is.
Yeah.
But a lot of fans, and I, to some degree, am one of those, I like continuity. I like it to tie together. The biggest thing I like is when shows, and I'm not just talking Star Trek series, let's talk the real world. I love it when shows that are spin-offs connect to each other. They keep storylines alive. Good examples, NCIS, Mark Harmon's program about the Navy Criminal Investigative Services. Well, they have 2 spin-offs, NCIS LA, NCIS New Orleans. With Scott Bakula, obviously, the former captain of the Enterprise. I like how they keep the stories intertwined. We're not all the time, mind you, but yes, the 2 NCIS and NCIS New Orleans are connected, and they refer back to each other. They'll refer back to a previous storyline or a plot line. And I like that. Let's give other shows, current shows like Chicago PD, Chicago Fire Department, FD, whatever it is. They connect with each other. They do crossovers all the time.
Right.
So that's what I like about Star Trek is when they cross over and they connect with each other. When, not just as an introduction to a series, as they always did a tie-in, like when TNG premiered. Who was the famous uncredited or credited at the very end guest star that connected the 2 shows together?
D. Kelly.
D. Kelly. And when TNG introduced, when DS9 came on, who crossed over?
Patrick Stewart.
There you go. When Voyager came on the line, who crossed over? DS9. So the point is you're tying everything together. Mm-hmm. You're connecting it with a bow. You're connecting it with a knot. That it is a complete series. Yes, there are going to be gaps. Yes, there are going to be hiccups. It's
okay.
Yes, there are going to be plot holes, and if you nitpick it to death, you're gonna drive yourself nuts. Okay, you're gonna be unhappy, and again, you're not gonna make every fan in the universe of Star Trek happy. Just not going to happen. Somebody somewhere is going to find something to nitpick.
Sure.
Talk about the uniforms. How the variance between TNG, first season, second season, then they became looking like the DS9 uniforms, and they started looking, and Voyager started crossing over. I mean, the uniforms are very, very, very similar, but people are so into detail that they will notice, well, wait a minute, there's a Brad missing. There's something is different.
Yeah. People get wrapped around the axle about that stuff.
Yes, and it's, to me, personal opinion, in my humble opinion, IMHO, you're nitpicking it too much. Enjoy it for what it is. It is a Star Trek futuristic universe that could happen. I hope, 300 years from now. That it's tying everything together. It's presenting a future that could be. And
that's a beautiful vision, Paul.
I mean, do I ever see it happen? Of course, not in my lifetime.
Well, you have to be a long-term optimist.
If I would love to be around in 300 years, because we have come so far, and in the 1960s to 2019, which is about 50 years, obviously. Look how much has come true in the Star Trek world. Mm-hmm. Let's look at basic communication devices. How many of us had flip phones? Not the new smartphones that we all have today, the Galaxy 6 and the iPhone 10 or 12 or whatever number they're at. Yeah. But how many people had the actual old style flip phone? You couldn't text on it unless you did A, B, C. Okay, enter C, A, T.
Well, as we
and they were the original communicators.
Last night, one of my podcast episodes dropped, and I interviewed Ethan Siegel, the author of the Treknology book.
Right.
And one of the things he talked about, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but he profiled something like 27 different technologies. It's some number like that. Yeah. It's not exactly that number. But he said that like 24 of them already came to pass.
In 50 years. Look at that. I can name 2 or 3. The communicators is obviously everybody's number one. If you put a poll out and said what instruments that Star Trek created are in the real world today, obviously everybody's going to say the communicators. Mm-hmm. And there are still working flip phones today. I used to have one not too long ago, not too many years ago. I used to have the old flip phone, and there was an episode of on Just TV the remake of Murphy Brown. And it's an updated version of the original 80s or 90s show. And they have a character that is obviously the IT guy. And when he was talking on the episode about, let me see your cell phones, and Murphy Brown, Candace Bergen, showed her the flip phone, he said, what the hell is this?
Does that belong in a museum?
And he said, I saw one. And it was and he brought up the World Star Trek, my God. So, obviously, the communicators, let's talk about pads.
Oh, yeah, we've got better stuff than they ever envisioned.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, our technology today in 2019 is actually better than what they're showing on TV, but you have to make it what it is.
One of the questions I've asked everybody who's come in here today is this. So, imagine I call you on the phone, and I say, hey, Paul, I'm in an airport. I'm about to get on a plane. I got enough time to download one episode of Star Trek before I get on the plane. I've never seen Star Trek before. What episode should I get?
Oh my God! I would have to give you one episode from each series because
I just got time to download one. I'm boarding in 10 minutes. I don't have time. I can only do one.
If you got to start at the beginning, because obviously you have to start with the original series so you get an idea what the show is all about. If you started with TNG, you're not going to know about the original characters unless they mentioned them, and they do occasionally. In the first couple of TNG episodes, the Naked Now, I believe, they mentioned, they were trying to solve a problem, and Riker came up on the bridge and said to Lieutenant Data, find something that Kirk said. So he mentioned Kirk 80 years later. So I would have to say you'd have to start with an original series episode, and to learn about the characters. And I would have to say one of the, obviously the early season 1, because you got to start where it began and then progress from that. If you've never seen Star Trek, you got to go with the first season.
So what episode, TOS season 1? I mean, it started with the Man Trap.
And it started with the Man Trap and Charlie X. I would say the Man Trap because that's where it introduced the characters, the pilot. Okay. And even though they were all wooden, even though they were all kind of learning their stuff and their craft, I would say the Man Trap because you get to learn about Leonard McCoy, you get to learn who Spock is, and the captain, James Kirk, and the rest of the cast. And you just have to start there to get an idea, because if you start later on, these characters are already established, and you're not going to have a backstory on them. You're not going to know who they are. It's like saying Game of Thrones. I have not watched one episode of Game of Thrones, ever. I have not watched The Walking Dead. I have not watched any of the sequels of The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones that are out there today. So if I ask you the same question, I've got 10 minutes. Which episode of the Game of Thrones should I watch so I understand what the series is all about?
Game of Thrones is one continuous story.
Well, like I said, so is Star Trek.
Right.
Star Trek is a continuous. Now, granted that the original series made and Next Generation made episodic episodes where they could be seen out of sequence, and each episode was its own mission, you still had an overall, consensus of what was going on. Where DS9 was episodic. DS9 was a serial. It had a serial.
It was serialized and episodic.
It got that way. During season 2 and 3, it became more of a serialized. The Dominion War, the Cardassians, the Founders, and all that. It became more and more, and then towards the last, especially 5, 6, and 7, everything did connect, and everything did wrap up in a bow. Same with Voyager. Voyager is a serialistic type program because they're trying to get home. And they do refer back occasionally to the Borg, especially. Janeway says, well, here we are again. Queen, Your Majesty. So I would say start at the beginning, and you have to just learn from that, and because if you tell me, like I said, if I ask you the same question, and you answered it, it's a continuing long storyline, how would I know who all these characters are? Same as like watching Dallas, the old TV show, Who Shot JR, back in the 80s, primetime drama. You got to understand the characters, you got to look at the beginning. You can't tell somebody, well, go look at Dallas season 5 and you'll understand who JR is. No, you won't know who JR is and Bobby and Miss Ellie and Jock and all that. And believe me, I'm a Dallaholic.
Yeah, all right.
I'm a Dallaholic. I have all 13 seasons of Dallas on DVD at home. Mm-hmm. I have all of the Dallas motion TV movies they made on DVD at home. So when I'm not a fan,
did you watch the part 2 that they made?
Oh yes,
a few years ago.
Oh, absolutely. I got them
fantastic.
on DVD. I was at Dallas 2.0.
Fantastic.
With Patrick Duffy, and I actually got to meet him a couple of times. And I talked to him and said, "Hey, I'm a real Dallaholic, and I love what you've done." I met Steve Keneally and Charlene Tilton, and they were amazed at what my interest in that program was. And I told them, "Listen, I was a teenager when I was on Friday nights, and most teenagers go out on Friday nights. My rule was back in the 1980s when that was on, to my friends and people, my circle, don't bother me. Leave me alone on Friday nights. Do not call." This was before texting.
Yeah.
Do not call. Do not knock on my door, because I have my Friday Night Dukes of Hazzard, my Dallas, and my Falcon Crest. And I was absorbed into that. Same thing with Star Trek. Same thing with whatever. I can't pick up Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead.
No. Yeah.
If you say watch last week's episode, I'm not going to know where the heck I'm at. So that's why
Walking
I say
Dead is just people versus zombies, man.
Yeah, but
that's all it is.
But as I say, to your question, start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Episode 1 will introduce you to everybody you need to know, and you just have to find more from that.
One last question for you, Paul. What is Star Trek to you?
A future, a possibility, an escape, a love, I say jokingly with a laugh, haha, an obsession, an addiction. It is all of that to me as an individual. I would not have put this Star Trek club together 13 years ago if it wasn't for my love of Star Trek. There is no Bonanza fan club. Bonanza ran long. There was no Gunsmoke fan club that ran 21 episodes. No Law and Order.
People aren't doing conventions for Cheers.
No, but they're still doing Star Trek. Now, I can't tell you exactly, point one, why it is Star Trek. The same reason that nobody knew why Jerry Lewis chose the MDA to be his voice. Because there could have been 101 different charities that Jerry Lewis could have supported. But every year, what did we all do for 40 some odd years on Labor Day weekend?
Labor Day, you watched the telethon. At
some point. You didn't watch all 21 hours.
No.
Some people were done. But what was the key moment of Labor Day weekend besides the barbecues? It was the Jerry Lewis telethon. Same thing with Star Trek. Going back to the MDA. Everybody wondered why Jerry Lewis chose the MDA. He never said. He never made it public why he chose the MDA, whether it was somebody he knew, whatever. He could have chose arthritis. He could have chose cancer. He could have chose God knows what, but he chose MDA. Well, on the same token, I choose Star Trek for all those reasons. This club has been a love. I used to run a Star Trek fan club, just to give you a bio, in Oregon, Southern Oregon, Northern California. I had a Star Trek club called Starbase Orca, OR.ca. And the reason we called it that was because Southern Oregon and Northern California were such a rural communities that our local TV station broadcasted to these outer markets through translators back in the day before cable became so popular. So I created Starbase Orca in Oregon to serve the Northern California and Southern Oregon communities of Wairika, California, Klamath Falls, California, Crescent City, California, or Klamath Falls, Oregon, excuse me, correct that, Klamath Falls, Oregon, Crescent City, California, Roseburg, Oregon, and of course the headquarters right back in Medford, Grants Pass, Oregon. And that club ran for several years in production and prosperous with my vice president. I wasn't an admiral, I didn't rank that way, I was president of the club because I founded it with his help. And we would go to these other communities, like I said, Roseburg, Wairika, and hold local meetings in those communities, which are 30 miles away, 40 miles away. But again, they were getting a TV signal from Medford. That's how they were getting their Star Trek once a week, every day at 5 o'clock on Channel 10. And I would have I would have meetings with the general manager of the TV station every 6 months. What's going on in Star Trek? What can I suggest you do? Can we do local programming? Can we do local events to get the viewership up? Can we do some on-camera stuff? Can we come into your studio? And we did. We worked together.
So let me ask you a question about that. Since I don't know if I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Please.
Some other guests on the show were talking about when they were growing up watching Star Trek on local channels. that they never actually saw all the episodes because the local station only ran selections of some of the episodes.
That's correct.
Right. So is that was your experience?
And that was
as well?
because obviously back then DS9 wasn't started, Voyager wasn't created yet, so I only had
TOS time.
Right. They were showing once a week. They would show on Sundays, I recall, an episode of the original series. But during the week, Monday through Friday, 5 o'clock, Channel 10 was The Next Generation. And then they would do a first run. They would repeat the others during the week, but they would do the first run episode, which is the current season, on Saturdays or something, if I recall. So that's all we had.
Yeah.
That was also back in the day that Columbia House was releasing their DVD collections on VHS tapes, where you get 2 episodes every month, and that is another thing I collect. You're asking me about my collection. I'm proud to say that I have all 172 episodes of TNG on Columbia House Video.
Do you have a VHS player?
I still have a VHS player now. Will I ever watch them on VHS? No, I will not. The reason I have all of them is because they're a collector's item, and they all match, and they're all in sequence. Right. In my
I would hesitate
case.
to put them inside a machine.
Now I'm also collecting currently the TOS episodes from Columbia House. I search eBay, I search Amazon, I search wherever I can find thrift stores and people and other online sites for TOS Columbia House. Now when that's done, there's only 2 left. DS9 and Voyager, because Enterprise was come out after Columbia House lost their rights to do so, and they closed. So I collect that kind of unique things, going back to that. So the only other thing you could do was to record an episode on your own VHS.
Yes.
Where you sit there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, record. It didn't have the state out where you could record the entire series.
Programming a VHS to record was such a pain.
It was horrible, but I did it. And the signal was not that great. I mean, I had snowy picture because of what it was, but it was all we had.
Yeah.
So the fan club was created, Starbase Orca. And the tagline of my club was, forgive me, we used to have a whale of a good time. That joke never gets any older. It never gets any better either. So I ran that club for several years. So then I moved to Oregon to Nevada. Moved to Nevada in 1999, where I was asked by the IFT, the International Federation of Trekkers, members who were coming to a convention one year, would I like to start a Star Trek club here in Las Vegas, because we didn't have one. There are small clubs, unofficial clubs, but I'd like to form one. Okay, why not? I have the time. I have the love for it and the ambition for it, and I don't mind putting in the hours to run it and execute it. And that was almost 13 years ago. And the USSLasVegas.org is currently meeting on the 3rd Wednesday of every month, almost 13 years later. We've moved around the city a bit because we had nerve enough to get kicked out of Star Trek The Experience. How dare they close the doors? I told them, listen, go ahead and go out of business, but leave the kitchen. Leave Quark's furniture. I'll come in and we'll cook our own meals, and we'll have our meeting under the big top. Well, we're not going to have any air conditioning or lights. I said, okay, if you must. So we closed. They closed. So we had to find something else. So we went to a Memphis Championship barbecue place. Then we moved to an Italian restaurant.
Loved Memphis Championship. They were really good.
For almost 2 years, we were over on Charleston and Rainbow at their Memphis Championship barbecue.
That's a funeral home now.
Yeah.
Place, now
do you know that? I wonder if they had a fireplace in the front of the restaurant.
Okay. All right. I don't even want to talk about that.
Should we wonder what they're using that fireplace for today? No. So we went from there. We went to an Italian restaurant, which closed on us. Memphis closed on us. So we thought, oh my God, what is going on? That everywhere we go, they close on us. What plague are we bringing to the universe? That 4 places have gone out of business after we take over. Well, now I'm proud to say for 2 years we've been at Blueberry Hill Restaurant and Bakery on the corner of Flamingo and Decatur here in the heart of Las Vegas, centrally located. On the 3rd Wednesday of every month, we've only canceled 3 meetings or postponed 3 meetings in 12 years.
That's a good track record.
And I am amazed. I say this to anytime somebody asks me, that we get an average attendance for 12 years of at least 30 to 35 people every month. Average. Talk about a social club. How many social clubs are still active that are still going strong, that have monthly meetings on the same day. Yes, there's been attrition. I'm not going to say there hasn't been. We've had members come and go. That happens. You're on a ship. You don't stay on the ship forever and a day. You serve time on a ship, just like in today's United States Navy. You're posted on board an aircraft carrier, the Enterprise, before it was decommissioned.
Yep.
You served 6 months, 8 months on board the carrier, and you transferred off.
Usually be longer than that.
Or maybe a year.
I was in the Navy, I know.
Okay, so you had time. It wasn't like you were posted there for 20 years or
Right.
10 years. You were there for a limited amount of time, so that's why we have attrition. It happens. I've had members move out of state.
It's all
People
right.
move, life goes on. But the club, the activities, the fandom, the relationships I have established professionally through the city, through the organizations that we've been asked to participate in, are priceless. I couldn't put a price on all that. And who do I thank? The 30 to 40, 45 people that show up every month, after month, after month, after month. We participate in the Star Trek convention every year. We pay creation the privilege. We don't generate any income. We're not allowed to. We don't want to generate income. We want to keep low profit status, if you will. So we are there to promote the club. At the convention site, we're there to be a community sponsor type thing. One of my officers, our chief enrichment officer, Allie Ingram, she created a program last year and the year before that where she puts together in her own time a resource book for tourists with a QR scan code that she promotes all over Facebook and on our club websites, where tourists can come to town. They can download this QR code and it will give them all the resources they need. How can they get a doctor if they need one in an emergency? How can they get a pharmacy if they need one in an emergency? How can they get groceries? Where's the closest grocery store for a tourist, because they don't want to spend
whatever's in the casino.
In the casino. They can, because they want to bring a little refrigerator, or they rent one or something for a week at some place, rent a center. So she puts this resource together. And this year, at this past convention, she actually offered her shuttle services to the grocery store for people who flew in, who don't have cars, who don't know where everything's at. These people are taking things up on their own to do because of their love for the show, because of what the club is all about. Do we have drama? Sure, sometimes. What social club doesn't? Do we have issues, conflicts? So does Star Trek.
Sure.
So does Star Trek.
It's part of being human.
It's part of being the human nature. The human condition will continue. Okay?
That's right.
The human adventure. But we're still there. We're still there. And I was almost ready to close the club a year ago and move back to Ohio. Me and my partner, the captain of the club, Robert Newell, were thinking about moving, and we talked to the club members. Well, if Robert and I move and give up all this, I'm not going to run the USS Las Vegas from Ohio. I'm going to create the USS Toledo fan club, Star Trek club, because I was thinking of moving to Toledo, Ohio. Hi, Toledo. And you'll have to wait a while. What are we going to do with the club, gang? Do I close it? Because I asked their opinion. I don't do anything without asking their opinion. I don't do it. I run it. I administer it with the captain and support of the club, but it's what they want to do. It's what activities they want to do. So what do we do with the club, guys? Do we close it? And they said no. Somebody else would take over. I said, well, you'd have some big shoes to fill. I wear a size 13 and a half. Hello. And we had a year, our one bad year, if you will. I call it the year of change, because the club went through 4 captains in 1 year. I stepped away, not from the club, but from the captaincy, because at the time, I was working real world on Wednesday nights. I couldn't attend meetings. I couldn't ask for every third Wednesday off. My boss at the time said, once in a while, maybe. So I couldn't do the Wednesday meetings anymore. But it didn't mean I was out of the club. I was still the founder. So I turned it over to my second in command. He kept it for 2 months, found out how much work it was. He turned it over to another officer in the club. And I didn't like the direction he was turning the club to. So he turned it over to our current captain, Robert Newell. And now it's very prosperous, because it's keeping in the same railroad tracks, if you will, the plan that I had for it. And I still have for it. I want it to go a certain way. I want it to go where we are involved with the community. We have local activities. We do all kinds of things. We do the movie events, the TV events, and wherever we can help out, we do. And that's what I want the club to do. And they're doing it. 13 years after the fact. I'm amazed. I am dumbfounded. I am speechless. People.
Well, it's clear that it's a labor of love for you.
It is. And Am I tired of doing it? No. If I still remain in Nevada for a year, 2 years, 3 years, will I still be doing this? I don't see why not. I can't predict the future. But for everything that we've invested as a club, one of my current members just recently, just this past couple of weeks, we needed a PA system for our club so we could do our meetings so people could hear. And we had been borrowing one from some folks, and it got sold. Okay, it happens. But we still needed one. So one of our club members went somewhere, found one, bought it, paid cash, donated it right back to the club. Now we have our own club PA system. These people are doing this.
That's what the fandom is,
and
right?
That's what
Star Trek's about.
And I just can't believe that these people are supporting the club. Not only are they supporting the club, but they're supporting each other. I've got a club member by the name of Karen Kunzig, who's our chief trivia officer, because we do trivia contests every meeting to test everybody's knowledge of Star Trek, and we give giveaways and prizes and everything. Unfortunately, she's on 4-stage cancer, lung cancer. She hasn't attended many meetings lately. But these people, these club members, these officers are going to her house and making sure she's okay. If there's anything she needs, we're there for her. We've had other members that have been out. I was out of commission for 9 days because I had medical issues. I was in sick bay at a local hospital, and club members rallied around me. I couldn't believe it. The biggest thrill I had was when I turned 50 years old. 4 years ago. Excuse me. When I turned 50 years old, I put it out to everybody. And I said, I'm going to do a big 50th birthday party. Originally, I was going to be doing it in Ohio with my family, but it was too cold. And they said, no, wait till summer. We'll do something. So I said, okay, where do I want to celebrate my 50th? Because that's when you remember. I said, Hoffer House.
Sure.
50 people showed up to celebrate my birthday, and 90% of them were for the Star Trek Club. They made themselves available at that time. The awe just doesn't stop. I cry sometimes because I'm so proud of what we have accomplished, how far we've come, how much we've done, and what's left to come, what's coming up, what events are we going to do that's going to get wonderful attendance and support, and the love these people give to each other. You know, yes, we have our squabbles. Kent Scow, a good friend of our club, he runs the Klingon Club here in Las Vegas. Okay, called the IKV Kaitless Row, and his name is Captain Tanek Walks.
Yes, I interviewed him.
Cool. Well, in private, we're the best of friends. Love him to pieces. Would do anything for him that I could. In public, we hate each other. He's a Klingon. I'm a Federation officer. We go at each other tooth and nail all the time. It was the same way, and I wrapped this up by saying we had with the Star Trek Experience family, we had a very serious issue occur to one of our family members, Tom Deichley, who was a Klingon General Motog of Star Trek The Experience for 10 years. Had the same love-hate relationship. I got to know him through our many trips into the Experience personally, and then as our club had meetings at the Experience for 3 years, that was a thrill. We had a playground that we took advantage of.
Oh yeah,
we took it for granted.
You had to.
It would never go away, and it went away. We cried. We cried tears over the river going through that place. But General Motog, Tom Deichley, became a good friend of myself and Roberts and the club, because we would have our meetings on Wednesday. He worked the shifts at the Experience on Wednesday in full makeup and full garb, and he told people in interviews that once he's got that on, he's General Motog. Yep, he's the general. But our relationship was so special that we'd go to a private corner for a couple of minutes away from everybody. Hey, Tom, how you doing? Shake hands, good to see you. And he would share stories of behind the scenes, you know, what he's hearing through the grapevine about the Experience and about the closing and all the rumors and everything. So we'd talk a moment or two or three. But pretty much he was all the character. He tried to take over my crew, tried to take over my ship, tried to get me thrown out of an airlock. I mean, it was the fun of it all, the spontaneous of ad-libbing. Yeah. Kent Scow does the same thing. He is General Motog, and I love the cosplay that we do. He does a Klingon feast every year in Valley of Fire State Park that my club participates with, and they're upset with the Admiral because I don't attend their local meetings, I don't attend their ship functions, and I'm on probation, I'm on this, I'm on that because I've been found guilty by the Klingon High Council. Of course. They put me on trial. They actually had me on a spit
Yeah, well, you're on your way to Rura Pente.
I was on my way to Rura Pente, or I definitely wasn't going to Stovacor. But we have these cosplays because we love each other, because we like what we do. So, on the same token, General Motog, unfortunately, if you haven't heard the story real fast, that he was murdered in his home. He was actually killed and shot by 2 intruders.
Yes, I saw that.
And that was a great loss, because we were going to be celebrating our anniversary. I think it was our 50th anniversary. I think I was really doing something big. And I went to him and I said, Tom, I got a favor to ask you. He said, okay. I said, I know you said in public, and I'm all for that you would never resurrect a general. I understand that. But if you recall how much fun we had doing that, and I loved every minute of it. I loved it when you tried to throw me out. I loved it when you interacted. And I couldn't eat that up enough. If you put that on the menu, I would have bought it. I said, would there be any way you would resurrect a general one last time? And come to our 50th anniversary party. Surprise everybody. Let's resurrect this one more time. What he told everybody no, he said yes. He said, I would be honored to resurrect a character, to spend an hour or whatever, putting on all the makeup and getting in all the garb. And it wasn't a month and a half later, if it was that much, I got the notification from Kirsten Szyminski that he was found dead in his home.
Yeah.
And I just froze. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe it. And I lost a good friend. It all comes back to this. These people love what we do. These people adore what we do. I love running the USS Las Vegas. I love the camaraderie of these people. I want to put that out there for the record. I could not run or be part of this if it wasn't for those. If it wasn't for those wonderful people. And I cried.
What TrekProfiles is about.
My heart.
It's about
I cried. It's emotional because I couldn't do what I do. These people, I might present the ideas. Let's do this, or can we do this? Do I have the support for this? Without them actually getting involved and helping and executing it, and then participating in the events. Like Mark here, he's doing this internal deal, and look how many members of my club have showed up.
Yeah.
To make an appearance to help him. He's coordinating our Toys for Tots campaign for this year, and we're kicking that off today. Official kickoff, the U.S. Las Vegas Toys for Tots donation campaign for this month and next month, and donating in December at NV Energy's Pearson building on Sahara and Jones with Chip Buchanan from, pardon me for saying, Cluck Radio, KLUC. So we do that every year. Yep. And it's just, I'm in awe, I'm in shock, I'm in underbelief that these people for 13 years are still here. And they allow me the privilege of being the Admiral and founder.
Paul, thank you for being on Trek Profiles.
It was my pleasure. I say to everybody, live long and prosper. Closing thoughts, if anybody out there is ever planning a trip to Las Vegas, they've not been here before, they want to come for a Star Trek convention every year in August, which is July 31st through August 4th, 2019, and you want local information about what to do, where to stay, recommendations, suggestions, you got questions about anything, please reach out to us. We're the local Star Trek fan club. We want to hear from you. We want to help you out any way we can. That's what we're all about. I close it by saying, live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Transfer complete.
Here ends this special dispatch of the Trek Profiles podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing from all these different kinds of Star Trek fans. And next episode, we will be returning to our usual format in episode 15. So we'll talk to you then. And until then, live long and prosper.